imagine if you're embracing somebody that in that moment, what if you didn't have them? What if they weren't there? As you embrace this person, imagine they weren't there. Like actually go to that place. What if they weren't there? What if you're hugging somebody else? Go to that place, let it hit you in the chest, and then remind yourself they are here. How would you hold them?
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform, where I'm talking to some amazing people whose chosen vocation in life is to help others perform at their best. Delighted to be joined today, all the way from California in the States. We have personal trainer and confidence coach. Welcome to the show today, Jeremy D. Murphy.
How you doing, Paul? Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this. When you first got in touch, you told me a little bit about yourself and what you do, and I was really intrigued. And I think a big part of that is the background story and where you've come from to get to where you are today. So tell us a bit about yourself. What got you to where you are today, Jeremy?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. So I'm gonna try to answer it as succinctly as possible, as it relates to, as I think it'll relate to your audience. But yes, thanks for having me on. I'm a personal trainer and confidence coach. Most of my coaching aspect is working with men in particular, and maybe we'll circle around to that as to what and why. But as far as the personal training side, I trained men, ladies, young people, teenagers. My personal training extends from three major legs of my style of personal training. It's either HIIT style training, right? HIIT style training, strength training, or martial arts, right? Boxing, kickboxing, right? And the HIIT style training is what I like to call what my long distance mentor, Funk Roberts, would call metabolic training, right? Similar, but not exactly the same. So anyway, I want to shout out to Funk Roberts. So yeah, but as far as I got started, so it's actually kind of a neat story. I got started. I got started. So I have a background in martial arts. I've been doing Shotokan karate. I started Shotokan karate in 2001 in college, and then from there, I started doing point sparring, like tournament fighting, and I started doing well. And from there, I went to kind of like amateur full contact fighting, amateur kickboxing, into amateur MMA, into professional MMA, right? So now I haven't fought professionally in the last. It's been a while since 2017, but believe it or not, it's still on my mind.
Right.
But I'm saying all that to say that fitness and martial arts has been a large part of my life. Before I got into martial arts, I participated in virtually every sport I can get my hands on in high school and growing up. Track and field, a little bit of basketball, a lot of bit of basketball actually, wrestling. Those are the kinds of things that I really enjoy doing. So. Always been a big time athlete. Never been like the best athlete, but I always loved sports. And so, as far as to answer your question, as far as how I got started in personal training, I remember the year was something like 2007, 2008 ish. And by that time, I was already doing amateur kickboxing. And at the same time, I was working like a regular 9 to 5. Right, I was working. I think it was at a bank at that time. What was Washington Mutual, which got bought by Chase several years ago. And I always knew 9 to 5 kind of work wasn't my kind of work. I'm not a kind of person that can sit still for very long. Like I can do this because I enjoy, conversating with people, but I can't like sit still at a desk. I'm not that kind of person. So I was in between jobs, right? I think they had laid us off, something like that. So I got laid off, and I was in between jobs. I was trying to find something. In spite of having a degree at that time, the market was crashing. So it's hard to find decent work. And I remember I was going into my chiropractor. We were able to work out a deal, and he would kind of put me together in between training, in between fights. And he asked me one day, "Hey, Jeremy, how's it going?" And his name is Dr. Najad. He's in this area where I live in Newark, Union City. And he said, "Jeremy, how's it going?" And I said, "Oh, actually, Doc, not that good. Kind of in between jobs, don't know what to do." And actually, getting into personal training was actually his idea. He said to me, he said, "You should do personal training." And at that time, I thought personal trainers were just meatheads. They just ran around and were like cavemen, right? And he's like, "No, no, you'd be good at it. People will listen to you. You're in shape." And in time, I thought, well, nothing else is working, so I might as well try it. And then,
Right.
I got kind of like a quick weekend certification. I applied for some jobs. I ended up at a place called LA Boxing, which is no longer in existence, in a town called Walnut Creek. And that was great because I could do personal training and I could also do boxing, kickboxing classes. So that was kind of like perfect. So I was kind of doing that already at at the places that I was training for my fighting. So I just took kind of what I learned, what I picked up, I applied it, and then I built up my classes, built up my personal training clientele, built up my style of training, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
wonderful.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
yeah,
And I've got a couple of questions, written a couple of things down there. So, hits
yeah.
for people who aren't familiar with the term, we're talking about high impact intensity training. Is that right? Is that
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hit training is like yeah, high intensity training, but yeah, similar to like metabolic training. Yeah,
yeah,
getting the heart rate up.
yeah, fantastic. And
Hmm.
in terms of, do you remember back, or do you have any thoughts as to what got you into the world of fitness and sport, and what attracted you to that in as you grew up? You know, was it the participation? Was it the competition? Why were you so involved in sport throughout your life?
Yeah, great question. It was because I was competing in at that time in tournament fighting, in tournament karate tournaments, and even though they weren't full contact, they were pretty competitive. At least I thought so at that time. So I was trying to figure out ways to get the leg up. So I'd pick up magazines and I'd read about fitness stuff, what different MMA fighters are doing in order to get more power, to get faster, to have more agility, to build up their endurance. I pick up these books. I pick up like Black Belt magazine, for example, or I pick up some of these other sports magazines that I could get my hands on. If GSP was on the cover of a magazine, I'd grab it. If Lyoto Machida is on the cover, Anderson Silva, all these kind of old school fighters. If these
Right.
are guys who are on the covers of these kinds of things, I pick it up and I try to find out what their training regimen was, and I try to emulate it so I can
Right.
get an edge on what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so taking that inspiration from those people that you emulate and you want to follow in their footsteps in some ways, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more then about what you do today in terms of who you help and how you help them.
So now I do personal training under my own brand. The brand is officially Fire Fitness, and I'm in the process of changing the name to a broader umbrella, which is JDM, my initials,
Right.
JDM Coaching and Training. And the concept behind JDM Coaching and Training is to is to give myself basically essentially the freedom to do either personal training, confidence coaching, and in some cases do both. There's a
Right.
handful of people that I with which I do both at the same time, and I think
Mm.
if I'm being completely honest, I think that's the I don't want to say like the future of coaching because that might be a mouthful, but I think that's a place where coaching and counseling and therapy is really kind of missing the boat.
Right.
Is putting people in a physical environment, allowing them to be physical, and then encouraging them to kind of get in touch with the things that they're struggling with, the things that are bothering them, the things that are challenging to them. And I say that because as a personal trainer, one of the things that made me want to become a confidence coach is I found some of my most kind of impactful, in depth, and interesting conversations with people while we're in the gym. And these are like high level people, because
Yeah.
most of the area that I work is some of the highest level people operating in not only in the industry but also in the world, right? So I work in the Silicon Valley area.
Mm.
So I found myself having conversations with people that were not even work related, typically more typically related to how they see themselves, how they were relating to their partners, their loved ones, how they're relating to their kids. And me, these people are all, by conventional ideas more successful than myself, right? So there was no misunderstanding there in terms of kind of like in terms of that hierarchy and that
Mm.
lens. But I believe, and I had a chance to get some reflection from people that I respect that I've also trained with. But what I believed happened was because of my something very interesting, because of my classical, to an extent, classical training as a traditional martial artist in Shotokan karate, and also my real world training as far as being a professional MMA fighter, it created a level of trust and authenticity that they saw. This has been reflected back to me that they saw that I didn't necessarily recognize that I had,
Right.
which is to say, it'd be like, for example, it'd be like if you could. So there's a book called I read a long time ago called The Art of Learning. I can't think of the author's name right now, but it was basically The Art of Learning was a book that this gentleman, I can't think of his name, but it's escaping me, but maybe it'll hit me later. But this gentleman he was when he was young, he was a championship chess player, and then when he was older, he became a championship like a kung fu competitor, right?
Right.
At 13, championship chess player. At 26, championship kung fu martial artist competitor. And the book talks about how the two are related, even though they seem completely different. How the two relate.
Yeah.
But as part of that, he talks about how when he learned chess as a classical. He was classically trained, but he also went out in the park and competed in chess with old guys with that had nothing else to do, that had all these unconventional moves and thoughts and ideas about how chess worked, right? So it made him a very unique kind of source of information. And so I think that's kind of what I became, not simply because of my own life experience, but because I had philosophies that had come from traditional martial arts that I tried to apply to my life, and that in some ways you can see how they played out in my life, and you can even see in some ways how they played out in how I fought. And I think people they had a they had a respect for that, and I gave them. I like to believe I gave them a unique perspective, and I just shared. I wasn't coaching in terms of like you should do this. I just shared what I was saying. What they were saying, I reflected back to them, and I would share my thoughts on it, my perspective, my experience with that, and I let them run with it. And over time, it seemed as though they got a lot of benefit out of that. They got a lot of a lot of positive results from some of the things that we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. And one of the things I've written down here, that element of confidence, even when you've got people who are conventionally, as you say, or outwardly very successful. I think generally everybody has an element of confidence lacking in their life, be it from a physical side, maybe they're comparing themselves against a competitor or somebody else who's in their industry. And I love that because the other bit that it first attracted me when you reached out, I was just like, on reflection, the best coaching and the best support that I've had has all been related to physical exercise as a part of that approach. So it's all if you're not confident enough in your physical movements and your fitness and your sort of ability to be comfortable in your body, I guess, then how do you expect to be comfortable in your mind on top of that as well? And I think the two go really, really hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah. See, yeah, very much so. People we've had, and it's less so now, but for the longest time in the Western culture, we've had a disconnect between these three main entities. This might get a little out there for some people, but it's hopefully some they can hang with it, and if not, then not. But we've had a disconnect for the longest time between these three main entities. The way we like our spirituality, our physicality, and our mentality. We've approached them as though they were different things, or in some cases, in the best cases, we might have combined two of them. Like, say, for example, our spirituality and our mentality, right? Or our mentality and our physicality. But if we're being more thoughtful, we start to recognize that the three are one, which is to say how the way that one operates can affect the way that the other operates, and so on and so forth. For example, it'd be hard for you to operate at your optimal level as a spiritual person. You could be a pastor, you could be you could be a preacher, you could be somebody that operates in the spiritual world. It'd be next to impossible for you to operate at your optimal as a spiritual person, let's say a spiritual teacher, and at the same time have a poor physical health, right? You can operate, but you're not going to operate at your optimal, right? It'd be very hard for you, and this is what people are starting to discover. It'd be very hard for you to operate at your optimal level as a CEO of Walmart and have and be 40 pounds overweight. You can operate, but you will not be able to operate at your optimal level. These are things that people are starting to understand very slowly, I think. And so these are the kinds of concepts that I without being too, it's kind of hard to say some things like very honestly. So you're gonna have to sometimes you gotta walk people to the water and encourage them to drink, right? You can't make them drink, but maybe you can encourage them to drink a little bit. So these are the kinds of things that people are starting to understand, that these are one. And once we start to understand this and operate like this, then the rest of life starts to become a little bit. Some of the other kind of challenges of life start to become less challenging, and the secrets of life start to open themselves up. What I mean by that is, let's say, for example, if you were feeling for example, I'll give you my own life story, right? Not too long ago, I think I shared in my story that 6 years ago I went through a divorce, right? Now I had been always fit, I'd always been in the gym, but I went through a divorce, and everything about me, my energy, my the way I saw myself, my mentality, my spiritual connection, whatever you want to call it, everything took a nosedive. Everything. The only thing that I was able to maintain for some time was I hung on to my personal business by a shoestring, and I was in the gym, right? And I figured if I can just do those two things, I can start to slowly figure out the rest. And it took some time, right? But as I started to do that became true. I slowly started to figure out the rest. I slowly started to rebuild my mentality, how I saw myself. I slowly started to regain a connection with something beyond myself. And now on the back end, I started to understand these things became one because I was able to maintain that one thing. It allowed me to build the other two, right?
Right.
And now I operate as though they're a singular thing and not separate things.
Right. No, I
Yeah.
really, really relate to that, and that element of you can be performing really well in one aspect of that, but if you can't, if as you say, if you're in the boardroom, you're in the gym, you're as a pastor on the pulpit, whatever it might be, you can perform
Mhm.
to a certain level with one of those things that they're heightened, maybe with two of them, but actually to perform at your very, very best, it's about
Mhm.
bringing all three of those up at one, isn't it? So yeah,
Right.
really relate to that. So tell me a bit more then, you because I noticed on your website and things you
Mhm.
work specifically or primarily with men who have been through a divorce or going through a divorce, or is that your
Mhm.
target market, or is it that you work with other people on
Yeah.
top of it? Well,
Yeah, that's my target market. As it turns out, I've been able to work with a variety of different people. Some in that demographic, and some women, some younger men that are looking to get possibly that have gone through a breakup and want to get possibly back into the dating pool, but they kind of want to figure themselves out first. So that is my demographic, but at the same time, it's attracted a different variety of people, which I find very interesting. But interesting in a good way. It's like pleasurably interesting. Yeah.
yeah, no, wonderful. And
Yeah.
on top of this, one of the things I'm always intrigued, we've got people who as guests on this show who are putting their energy into helping others perform at their best. I'm always
Right.
intrigued to find out, what do you do personally to help you be at your very best?
So I have a couple of practices. Number one is I journal almost daily, sometimes in the evening, sometimes at night. I have a journaling practice where I essentially I do a handful of things. I do three main things. I check in with myself. So that is to say, like, how am I feeling today? I'm feeling
Right.
awesome. I had a great day the other day, whatever the case. I'm feeling like I'm operating on all 10s across the board. I kind of check in with myself. That's the first kind of third of it. The next third is I go through I have my affirmations, right? I have the ways because you have to really check your self-talk. I even consider that spiritual self-talk.
Right.
You can argue that it's mental, but I would challenge that it's also spiritual. It's a practical way of applying spirituality,
Mm.
developing your self-talk. So I do my gratitude journal. I talk about I remind myself the things that I'm grateful for. I remind myself the things that I have done well recently, that I am doing well. That's the second third. And then I
Mm.
do my affirmations that are propelling me forward. They're designed to help me stay focused on what's the thing that's next. That's kind of above and beyond, but at the same time, right in my grasp, right? And this is designed to remind me like this thing is right here. It may seem big, but you're already this thing. You're becoming this thing. You are this thing. You are this person. You are this man. And as you remind yourself of that, opportunities in life will allow you to start to materialize that.
No, I love that,
Yeah.
because those are some great practices that any one of us can take on board, really, aren't they? And just start that and see where
Yeah.
it takes us. No, wonderful.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Um,
sir.
so let me ask you, then, if you could help any individual or even a team or an organization with the
Right.
skill set and the experience that you've got, who would you want that to be?
If I can, okay, so that's a fantastic question. So there's a lot going on right now in terms of what's happening with men. I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah.
You can make a great argument that we're in the midst of a men's mental health crisis. I don't think, not only do I think that you can make a good argument for it, I think it's an actual fact. And at the very same time, I think it's something that's generally being ignored. We are talking about it more in the last, 5 years, maybe. But it's still, we're not talking about it enough. And so, sorry, give me one second. This, yes, okay, but we're still not talking about it enough. And so, as a result, there's a lot of men who are struggling with life at various ages. Anywhere from 16 to 66, and trying to figure out kind of what's next for them. There are people having quarter life crisis, midlife crisis. We have men, taking their own lives. I
Mm.
read a study that said, and I believe it was 2022, we lost somewhere between 40 to 50,000 men in that one year to suicide. That's like, if you imagine 40 to 50,000 men taking their own lives. That's not including law enforcement. That's not quite including military. That's not including fire departments. That's not including people that have gone into some situation and lost their lives as a result of their occupation or because of the activity. They have
Right.
taken their own lives, right? And these are people that are single, married, left children behind. And so this is a crisis in and of itself, because what is our society without strong men? Now, at the same time, on the other hand, there's a group of voices that are, let's just say, not so excited about men right now, right? There's a group of voices that are, you can say, bashing men or talking down on men. There's a group of voices that even say that the fact that there's a men's mental health crisis is not even a thing. Or there's some really, really small, but there's some really kind of incredibly, let's say, negative voices, really that are really almost pushing the narrative that some men deserve to be unalived, as they say online, to have their lives taken. I'm not sure how sensitive your audience is to it, so I'm trying to use words that I think that they might be okay with. But but that's because I want to be respectful of your channel. But that said, you can't judge all men by the actions of a handful. That's number one. Just like you can't judge all of anything, right? I just think some of the nonsense is crazy. Anyway, but so there's that, and then there's another, and so as a result, men feel like, oh, I'm not wanted anywhere. I'm not a good person. Just kind of automatically, just out the gate, I'm not a good person. I'm not wanted anywhere. I shouldn't do anything. I can't say anything. I can't look at anybody. Everything I do is a problem. And so this group of men are searching for, what do I do with myself then? If I'm a problem everywhere, if I'm not wanted anywhere, if everywhere I turn, people are telling me that I'm bad, that I'm just by existing. And then here comes this thing called the red pill, which is saying, hey, you're not bad, you're actually good. But the red pill, in my opinion, takes things to the other extreme. You're good, the other people are bad. All women are terrible. All women are crazy. All women are cheaters. They take things to the other extreme. So now you have these two extremely loud minority, as best as I can tell, minority, but still extremely loud and extremely prevalent online voices kind of attacking each other. And you've got men like, some go this way, some feel this way, some take their own lives, some go into solitude, some, you got men kind of just doing all this other stuff. And we need to kind of, what I like to do, what my mission is, number one, men should not be killing themselves. It's not okay that we're losing good men on a daily basis at that extent, to that number, and we haven't made it a real national crisis. It's not okay. There are men that are stepping up to do their part. I'm one of those men. That's my goal. That's my mission, be one of those men. And I say that because I know that feeling. Right? There was a time where I could not understand how a person can take their own life. There's a time. I went through my divorce. I lost my father figure, and I went through a depression, all back to back to back. So I know now, I understand what kind of mentality in that darkness, in that place where you can say, like, you know what, I'm not needed here. While being at the same time the best kind of person you could possibly be. At that time, when I was in that place, I was working my way out of a marriage, but I was a father of two, still a father of two, good person, pay my taxes, take care. My entire life has been essentially devoted to helping other people become better. And yet I'm in a place where I want to take my own life. Now I can only imagine how many other men are in the exact same place. Now, what does the world look like when men, like, for example, what does the world look like where people like that encouraged you, people that inspired you? What does the world look like? What do you, Paul, look like if those men weren't there for you because they took their own life? The men that were stepped up for you, the men that kind of spoke on your behalf, the men that taught you how to talk to women, how to change the oil in your car, whatever those moments were. What if they weren't there? Who would you have turned out to be? How would you have made it this far? These are the kinds of questions we got to start asking ourselves, right, as we move forward. So we got to figure out a way to give them the confidence, to give them the space, and also to give them the tools so they can save their own lives. Because it may not seem like a crisis right now, but if it keeps going the way it's going, by the time we as Westerners figure out that it is a crisis, it'll be too late. That's the problem, right? So we have to do something right now. That's part of my mission. As we do that, we try to create a space for men. One of the things that I teach, I have several tools, but one of the things that I teach that I want to share with your audience is that every man should have 5 men that they can go to at virtually any time for virtually anything. I've said this many times on my platforms, right? Okay. But every man should have a ride or die, big brother, coach, mentor, and a father figure. I have all 5, right? And as you start to get better at this, curating this team of yours, I call this your fight team. Just like when I was fighting MMA, I had a whole team of people that helped me. Like, I had a team, I'd have my team within the team that helped me get ready for fights. It's the same concept. You have all your friends, all your social, whatever, but within that, you have a solid 5 within your circle that are like your precious circle. These are your real folks, right? Each one has a different function, right? Your ride or die is a person where if there's something that you have to do, maybe you got to get your hands a little dirty, they're there, right? No questions asked, like they're just on it. Have you ever seen that movie? Called The Town with Ben Affleck, Jeremy Renner? It's fairly popular. So there's this movie called The Town. Ben Affleck, Jeremy Renner, right? And they're basically like lifelong childhood friend criminals. These 2 guys, right? So at some point in the story, Ben Affleck retires from the criminal life. He's kind of pulled back in. He goes to his best friend, childhood friend, Jeremy Renner, and he says this. This is a perfect illustration. He says to him, He says, hey, I need your help. We're going to do some bad things. We're going to hurt some people, and we can never talk about it again. Jeremy Renner turns to him and takes a minute. He says, whose car are we taking? That's your ride or die, right? Then you need a big brother, somebody who's kind of ahead of you in life who you can go to. They're going to tell you what's right next around the corner. If you're single, they're married. If you're married, they are married with their first kid, so on and so forth, right? You need a coach, somebody like myself, right? To give you this. This coach is like the tactician, the Captain America of your team, right? You need a mentor. Mentor is like the Professor X. Mentor is like, okay, here's the bigger picture. Here's where you want to be. Here's a view, the 30,000-foot view, top down. If you want to get to where I'm getting, you need to do these steps now. You need to avoid these people. You need to get this job, get this degree, get in these spaces, right? Right. And then last but not least, your father figure. Your father figure is all of that and then some. Father figure is the one that tells you how to talk to women. Your father figure is the one that tells you that you can do it. Your father figure tells you you're strong enough because I told you you're strong enough. Your father figure is the one that tells you, that tells you, you better marry that woman. You better marry that woman. All right. Your father figure is the one that kind of like just guides you. And he has a voice. He has a distinct kind of way of speaking to you that nobody else has. Every man needs that. And if you don't have that, there are ways you can build that. And that's part of what I teach.
Oh, the fight. What a fight team. So it's a great challenge for any of us out there. If we got our fight team lined up and ready for us and supporting us. So that's
Yes,
wonderful.
sir.
Let me ask you a different question then. If you could, maybe it relates to one of those five people, maybe it's somebody else, but if you could sit down and have a coffee, have a drink, have a meal with somebody, one person who you thought, actually, just by spending some time with that person, my performance is going to go even further. Who would you want that to be?
So it's really interesting you asked that question. So I'm going to try to answer this question without getting overly emotional. So I have my biological father, and I've known my biological father my entire life. Unfortunately, the situation that I was kind of born into, we grew up apart, right?
Right.
We've had a relationship. I know him. We talk very often. But the person that ended up becoming my father figure he was my fight coach actually, and he passed away in 2017. And that I miss him every day. That's the person I would have a coffee with and just want to ask him everything. What do you think about this fight? If he's watching from heaven, what do you think about this fighter? I would if there's not a whole lot that I wouldn't give up for like an hour with that guy. Just one more time.
Wonderful. And out of interest, who is that?
His
Shout out
Pops.
to?
His name was Pop. Pops is a fight coach with the team AKA in San Jose. Pops Walter Carvalho, senior. He trained many fighters throughout his like 40 years of coaching, something like that. Many fighters. One of his champions, for example, is Cain Velasquez, who's I'm sure to be a Hall of Fame UFC fighter. Yeah. So I was on the tail end of Pops's legacy, and Pops took me from being like basically like a zero to a champion in like a handful of years. And he was just that guy, man. He was the guy where he said if he said go, you win. If he said do this, you did it, even if you didn't understand. Because his conviction in you, it was the kind of guy where this is the thing that most people don't understand. This is why saving men is so important. We have lost the value, we've lost the understanding of the value of the masculine frame and masculinity in our homes, in our communities, in our nation. We've lost the understanding, all of us, men and women. We've lost the understanding of what masculinity truly is. But we've also, along with that, unfortunately, we've lost the understanding of the value of the father figure. We've put a lot of media and attention and love and care and respect on the mother figure. And the mother has done great things. But there's also clear evidence when you're raised in a single family mother home, the results versus when you're raised in a single family home with a father. Okay, that aside. There's clear evidence. You're not sure what I'm talking about? Just look it up. I don't have to go into that. We've lost the value of the father figure. And what I've learned when I was training with Pops is the father, and I have other fathers, and I've watched them do the same thing. As a child, even as a grown person, there's still a bit of child in you. There's a bit of child in you, even as a grown person. And so when you're dealing with a grown man who has, for example, has a inability to control his emotions, gets very angry, gets very excited, gets very, who can be violent, his emotions haven't been trained. He hasn't been trained how to manage his emotions and operate out in the world in a more tactical, practical manner, right?
Right.
It allows his emotions to get hold of him, right? The father figure the father energy is the energy that helps you tame your emotions. But also, which is very important, but he sees you. There's a book that I read called it's a phenomenal book called Lover, Magician, Warrior, King. Lover, Magician, Warrior, King. And it talks about masculine psychology, man psychology versus boy psychology. A lot of us are operating out of boy psychology. That's the problem. But one of the things that they talk about, it's a brilliant book. One of the things that they talk about is in man's psychology, as a father, part of your duty is you see the child, you see the family, you see them. And there's a recognition that comes from a father that's different from a mother, especially if you're a young boy or a man. There's a recognition that comes. There's a recognition that comes, and part of it is you are good enough. You are strong enough, right? And that comes as you. And then there's an investment that comes from the father. Many fathers, it's like a tough love, but it's the kind of love where the father says, "When I'm gone, you will be able to handle this, right? When I'm gone, you'll be able to handle this, right?" And different fathers communicate that in different ways, right? There's an example, right, in the movie Black Panther. Black Panther is the first one there's a lot of great ideas in the Black Panther. One of them is when T'Challa, right, goes to the spiritual realm, he sees his father who has passed away, and he says to his father, "I'm not ready to do this. I'm not ready to be king. I'm not ready to do this without you." And his father says, "What kind of father would I be if I hadn't been preparing you this entire time?" That's what the father does. The father sees the child, right? But as part of seeing the child, the father builds the child so that the child doesn't need the father at some point, right? That's what a lot of men never got. A lot of men never got that understanding. They never got that investment. They never got that memo. So they don't know how to operate in the world, whether it comes to building a family, having a significant other, dealing with their children, dealing with their boss. They never got that understanding because they were never seen by the father. They were never seen to let it be known that they were enough. And they never got the investment of that strength to then make the strength their own. In a short amount of time, Pops did all of that for me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, big shout out to Pops then. Yeah, definitely. I'm keen to know if you were to leave the audience here with one key message from this conversation here, what would you want that to be?
Man, that's a good question. One key message is that there's a couple. There'd be a couple, right? I was listening to who was I listening to that said something that's so brilliant. Oh man, I like to give people credit where credit is due, and I can't. Oh, there's someone. I was listening to somebody, and he said, "Oh, it's so good." Anyway, so there's a couple. The message number one is, this is not mine. I got this from somebody else. I can't remember the name. Maybe your audience can find it for me. We are all losing. Life is ultimately a losing game. Ultimately, we are all losing, right? You're going to lose your loved ones. You're going to lose your dog. You're going to lose your property. Either it's going to part from you or you're going to part from it. We are all losing, right? So in knowing that, again, I got this from somebody else. Hopefully it'll come to me before. In knowing that, when you are with your people or when you're with someone that's important to you, this thought leader said, imagine when you're embracing somebody, for example, imagine in that moment not having them. John Sexton, he's a divorce attorney. Yeah, I believe his name is John or Michael Sexton. He's a divorce attorney. He said, imagine, again, this is his, not mine. Imagine if you're embracing somebody that in that moment, what if you didn't have them? What if they weren't there? As you embrace this person, imagine they weren't there. Like actually go to that place. What if they weren't there? What if you're hugging somebody else? Go to that place, let it hit you in the chest, and then remind yourself they are here. How would you hold them? How would you say goodbye, right? We are all losing. And so we don't recognize that typically until we get to our 60s or 70s or until somebody passes away. But every time I say goodbye to my boys, I say, I love you. Any of my buddies, people on my fight team, like my people that I consider family, I love you. Because I don't know when's the last time, right? We're all always losing. But if you can remember that, then it makes this moment so much better. It makes the next moment so much better. It makes the next opportunity, even if you're struggling, even if you're down in the dumps, even if you're depressed, even if you're $100,000 in debt, you wake up, you're like, I got another shot. Today I have another shot to turn it around. And I can all turn around just like this. But if you have to remember, we're losing, we're all losing, but we have right now. We have this moment right now. What are you going to do with this moment right now?
What a fantastic reminder and a great point for us all to think about in that space. I love that. And one final question from me then, Jeremy. If people want to know more, if people want to get in touch, where do they go to find you, and how do they get in touch with you?
Oh yes, I'm pretty easy to find. So I'm on first and foremost my website, www.jeremydmurphy.com, where I kind of outline the three things that I do the most, which is personal training in terms of my, lifting, uh, martial arts training, and men's confidence coaching. I kind of outline those as best as I can. Um, Speaking of personal training, I'm coming out with my own channel, Thrive. Thrive is going to be an online fitness channel where I really show my martial arts, martial arts fitness videos, martial arts concepts. It's more of a passion project. It's just something that I love. So people can follow me at it's going to be at Thrive TV on YouTube. But so that's in the future. Of course, Facebook /Jeremy D. Murphy, LinkedIn, Jeremy D. Murphy. I have a lot of content there. And I'm just in the process of revamping my Instagram. I'd also like people, if you're at all interested in learning more about either my swagger back coaching, which is designed to help men recover from divorce or breakup and get back out there into the world, or what I call path to purpose coaching. If you're interested in either of those, or interested in a swagger back, you can just go to my content, message me swagger, like on Facebook, for example. If you're interested in path to purpose, you just message me purpose, right? You get for being your audience, you get a 30-minute free coaching session where we can find out what kind of what you're going through, what you're challenged with, and we can start to design a plan for how you can move forward. Whether it's swagger back coaching, message me swagger, path to purpose coaching, message me purpose, and we can start to work together.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'll
Yeah.
make sure that all of those links and links to the books and the movies and everything that you've mentioned in here, make sure they're all in the show notes for everybody. And
Right.
as always with my guests, I do encourage the audience, take people up on these offers, go out and connect, have that
Right.
free 30-minute coaching conversation. You just never know where it's going to take you. So, um,
Right.
so many great insights and great stories. And I love the work that you're doing, Jeremy. So thanks for being on the show today, Jeremy D. Murphy.
Hey, thank you, Paul. That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you, audience. Hope you guys loved it. Hope you guys got something good out of it. And I'll catch you on the next time. All right.
Yes. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.